Fairline has had a very successful run with its Targa series of yachts, and one of the most successful in that lineup has been the 45 Open. Customer feedback has shown that they needed to have an enclosed version, a GT version. So here, I'm going to do a sea trial and performance evaluation on the first of its kind in the US, the Targa 45 GT. First thing we'll take a look at is the power plants. The engine room is accessed from a hatch on the port side of the sun pad. Now, there's literally no room in here because we've got a tender garage, and that's normal. I would expect to see something like that. Focal point being the twin IPS 600 engines at 440 horsepower each. We can go up to the IPS 650s at 480 horsepower, and we also have a 10 kW generator right at the stern. And I can also see that the pods are connected directly to the engines. There's also an option for putting a gyro stabilizer here. That will be a Seakeeper 3. Now, let's look at the other side of the tender garage, the inside. And now you can see why it's such an attractive option to have this tender garage. It's actually large enough to hold a Williams 280 mini jet. If you don't want to have the tender in here, look at the amount of storage you'll get. And of course, I should point out that there's so much more access to the engine room from the floor of the tender garage that lifts electrically. To the port side stairs, we have the connectivity for the 50 amp shore power cord. To the starboard side, there's an option for a passerelle. To both quarters, heavy-duty cleat with dual rollers, all mounted to a stainless steel base. There's storage for excess line just behind. We can also put a warping winch here, and there'll be a foot control switch right there. Moving to the side decks, I'd like to see a grab handle right here, but glad to see that there's a full-length one going on top of the coach roof. Width, 18 inches and 28 inches high. That exceeds ABYC standards. There's a midship cleat. Coming forward, there's another midship cleat, and that brings us to the ground tackle. It's concealed under a hatch with a lift and lock latch. Thank you very much. I see an all-chain rode, a Lumar windlass leading through a chain stopper to a recessed anchor roller, and then a polished stainless steel anchor just ahead of that. There's a receiver for a remote control, and then to both sides, cleats, and then just ahead, chocks. Not an ideal setup because, I mean, here we're not even using it. Given that we're going to use lines like this, I'd like to see some chafing gear on the outside of this cleat. And at the working end of the bow, the rail height increases to 31 inches. The antenna array is in a fixed position, but there is a collapsible option if you need to increase your bridge clearance. So now, let's take a look at the operational features inside. We'll start with the helm. The helm is to the port hand side of the starboard mounted console. There's a compass directly in line with the wheel, two beverage holders on the panel that houses the 7-inch Volvo Penta display, the steering wheel on a tilt base, and the trim tabs. Electrical switches to the right-hand side and the left, Garmin depth gauge, windshield wiper controls. Over to the right-hand side, the IPS joystick, the ignitions, and the digital controls, and a 12-inch display over to the side. Now there are two bucket seats, extremely comfortable bucket seats. The observer is going to be to the starboard side, right next to the opening side window. There's a footrest just above there, but I can also flip down that footrest, and now I've got someplace to put my feet, and it also helps me when I stand behind the helm. So now when I stand, I can open up the sunroof and have my sightline be above this upper frame of the windshield. With the sunroof closed, it's right at my head height, and I'm 5 feet 8 inches, so that'll give you an idea of where you will stand. Now down below, right in the salon area, generator controls, switch from the generator to the shore power, and battery switches. Directly across, open this hatch, wastewater gauge, freshwater gauge, gray water. And finally, our last power panels, right on the way to the master stateroom. These are the main breaker panels, 110 220 volt forward, and the 12 volt DC aft. With the twin 440 horsepower IPS 600 engines run up to 3740 RPM, our speed topped out at 30.1 knots. Best cruise came in at 3,400 and 25.5 knots, where the 36 gallon per hour fuel burn produced a range of just over 182 nautical miles, all while still holding back a 10% reserve of the boat's 286 gallon total fuel supply. She'll plane in 6.6 seconds and hold plane down to 12.9 knots. We reached 20 miles per hour in 7.9 seconds and 30 in 20.1. I have to say, I'm enjoying this drive. It's a fun boat to operate. It's IPS, so it has the same characteristics that we would expect from an IPS, the wide turning angles. We came around at 24 knots, 180 degrees in 30 seconds, 5-6 boat lengths, so not a tight turn, but I wouldn't expect it to be. Drop the speed down, and then you get more swing out of the pods, and then your turn tightens up a bit. She likes trim. When you get her up on plane, and I mean a solid plane, not just the minimum planing speed, but get her solid on plane, start bringing in the trim, get that bow to come down. You want about a level ride, then she'll pick up speed. It's not going to be a boost in speed that you're going to feel, but if you look at your screen, you'll start seeing the numbers climb up and up and up. So she definitely likes trim. Get that bow down. Got a comfortable turning angle. She doesn't have a lot of slide in the turn, so she stays comfortable in the turn. You're not going to be shoving everybody over to one side. That's a nice feature. I like that. Also in the turns, you're not going to lose a lot of speed. From 24 knots, when I put it into a hard over turn, I only lost maybe 0.5, 0.6 knots. That's about it. So nice handling boat, good performance. And a couple of points on visibility. It always seems to be an issue with Euro-style boats that have a lot of these curves to the overhead. In this case, if you're operating at idle speed, you've got a good sight length to the horizon, but above the upper frame of the windshield, it kind of blocks your view a little bit. Once you're running and you're on plane, the bow is up enough so that I've got nice sight lines straight ahead. Little bit of blockage over to the right-hand side because of the wide pillar over there. More importantly, though, notice how low we come down on the sides. When you go to put it into a turn, she leans over and then creates a blind spot. That's going to be the same with any boat this style. So the point being, make sure you clear your turns by taking a look left and right before you initiate the turn. Just make sure it's clear. Now, when you're standing, I've got a platform lowered. If I'm standing up just above my line of sight, and now that is in my line of sight, but if I open the sunroof, now I can see right over that frame, and it's great visibility, and in fact, much more panoramic view. Last thing I'll mention, huge windshield. That single piece windshield is really great. I would like to see defrost vents because I have a feeling that on a rainy day that's going to be problematic. So she's got solid handling characteristics and a comfortable feel, and she's also comfortable to be on when you're entertaining. But that's another video. Be sure to look for it. For now, this is my full performance evaluation and sea trial on the Targa 45 GT from Fairline. For BoatTEST.com, I'm Captain Steve. We'll see you on the water.